Good evening and welcome to my How Healthy Are You weekly educational call. My name is Dr. Thomas Brewer. I'm a PhD chemist. And for this evening's call, we have a number of questions that were texted and phoned and emailed in. So I'm going to be answering those questions for this educational call. If you have a question, please send it in between now and next week's call so I can answer it next week. So the first question is from Angie, and she heard that the Steromax has been delayed again, and that is true. The Steromax did not make it in on Friday, which would have been 3 days ago, as promised, yet much to my surprise, there was a contamination issue with one of the sprouts, and the company has to start all over to manufacture a batch of Steromax. So that means at least another 4-week delay, which means many people are going to be out of Steromax at a critical time when many people are extremely interested in strengthening their immune system a lot more than normal, because that's the only way to fight off any virus, whether it be COVID-19, the flu, common cold, anything. So what I want to do is provide some alternatives other than Steromax to improve and strengthen one's immune system. Most of these you've heard of, but there are some details. The first is vitamin D, and I believe most everyone in the past 4 or 5 months has Googled some form of strengthening their immune system or some question relating to vitamin D. And it is a very good supplement to increase one's immune system. But there are some tricks to taking vitamin D. The first is you have to realize that you make lots and lots of vitamin D from your cholesterol when you're outside. So the sun acts as the energy source to convert a reactant, cholesterol, into a product, vitamin D. So if you're not able to go out into the sun for 10 to 20 minutes a day and have skin exposure, and that causes another potential problem with respect to skin cancer, but it is a short time frame, and everything has a drawback. If you want to supplement with vitamin D, do not buy a supplement where the gel cap is more than 2,000 IUs of vitamin D per capsule. So you do not want to try to supplement with 5,000 or 10,000, I've even seen 15,000 IUs of vitamin D. Actually, your vitamin D levels will decrease when you take these large doses of vitamin D. So instead, the optimum dose for vitamin D is 2,000 IUs, and do that 3 times a day. If you want to do it 4 times a day, that's fine also. So that will give you plenty of vitamin D, and your vitamin D levels will increase, and it will not hinder your body's production of vitamin D. When you take very large doses of vitamin D, it essentially shuts your body's production capacity down. The other way to increase one's immune system, and again, I'm sure most of you have learned this, is taking zinc. And even though zinc is included in many multivitamin formulas, it's usually best to take it a la carte, just like the vitamin D. And as long as your zinc source is a liquid or a capsule, not a hard-pressed tablet, but a capsule, just following the instructions on the bottle should be fine. And zinc has so many benefits. But like any supplement, we do not want to overdose because supplements have very strong effects on our bodies. The effect is actually similar to taking pharmaceutical medication. It's because a good supplement will have a large effect on the body, just like pharmaceutical medication will have a large effect on the body. And it is not a good idea just to take supplements because you think you need them or you saw an advertisement on TV. It is a big decision to take a supplement. And I don't know if anyone would see a commercial for a blood pressure medication or a statin drug on TV and then just ask their doctor to write up a prescription because they want to take it just because they saw the advertisement. And the same is true, even though it sounds silly, you don't want to take pharmaceutical or nutraceutical supplements, vitamins, minerals, without thinking. Do you need them? What purpose are they going to serve? Okay. The next way to increase your white cell activity and allow your body to maintain a strong and active immune system, just don't stop taking your plant enzymes with every meal. That alone will increase your white blood cell strength and activity. So don't cut back on enzymes. Finally, another way to increase your immune system is something from Qigong or Eastern type medicine. And all you have to do is kind of make a soft fist and pound your chest like King Kong did in the movie, and you would pound your chest with both hands for just a few seconds. Some people do it with just tapping with their fingertips on their chest. And you would do this for, say, 9 seconds or so. And this has a great effect to stimulate the immune system. In fact, it's even been called a Qigong immune shot. So just loose fist pounding on the chest. So those are some great alternatives to taking Steromax to increase your immune system strength and activity, especially when you do not have access to Steromax, though I would recommend this even if you do have access to Steromax. So that was the first question. We have another question from Beth, and she had a question on diabetes and blood sugar. And of course, we've talked about this before, but it's always good to go over it again. So when we consume any carbohydrate at all, it must get converted to glucose. And certain carbohydrates, or at least certain foods, the carbohydrates in certain foods, will convert to glucose very quickly. So the foods that convert to glucose quickly are going to be sugar and high fructose corn syrup and your stereotypically carbohydrate-rich foods. What people call carbs, they're usually referring to rice and noodles and baked goods. Now, vegetables are pretty much all carbohydrates, but people don't think of vegetables as a carbohydrate-rich food. It just so happens to be a good source of carbohydrates. And I have a whole video on this on YouTube. It's called The Carbohydrate Hierarchy. And it's under my name, Dr. Thomas Brewer, without the Las Vegas ending. And you can watch that also and learn about carbohydrate and carbohydrate sources and what they do in your body. But the high glycemic index carbohydrates, they convert to glucose quickly. And that's where the problems come in if a person cannot utilize that glucose, which is just the form of a reduced form of a carbohydrate, and all of them end up as glucose. But if it goes fast, there's a lot of glucose put into the bloodstream, and it's got to get out of the bloodstream and get to your brain and get to your muscles. And our brains need lots of sugar, glucose, and our brains need lots of fat, but all in due moderation. So in order to get this glucose out of our blood, it's got to cross various cell membranes. And as long as the glucose can cross a cell membrane, everything's fine. It gets out of the bloodstream and it gets utilized. But if the cell membrane is blocked, then the blood sugar builds up. So the sugar content of the blood keeps increasing. Now, what gets the glucose or sugar out of the blood is insulin. So that's insulin's job. So when we consume a food that consists of high glycemic index carbohydrates, fast burn carbohydrates, they get to glucose quickly, glucose builds up, our body must secrete insulin from our pancreas so that we can get that glucose out of the blood. Most people have a problem getting that glucose out of the blood because the cell membranes are blocked. So they end up getting an insulin spike because the body keeps producing more and more insulin to get this sugar out, but the body can't. So you have a lot of insulin in the blood and a lot of sugar in the blood, and this leads to a lot of troubles, which is the definition of type 2 diabetes. And the solution is simply to clear the cell membranes so that the insulin and glucose can cross the cell membrane, get out of the blood, and can go where it's supposed to go. And there are a couple of ways to clear the cell membranes. The first is to stop blocking them, stop polluting these cell membranes. And the wrong fats is what clogs these cell membranes. So these are fats from vegetable oils, corn oil, palm oil, all processed oils, pretty much the oils used in baked goods, and the oils that are found in foods such as so-called healthy nutrition bars. They must use an oil. They'll use some form of hydrogenated oil, a processed oil, both. And these oils clog up our cell membranes. So first, stop consuming these bad oils. And they come with foods you shouldn't be eating anyway. The next thing is to start consuming an oil that helps dissolve the blockage. And the best one for that is coconut oil. That is the diabetes cure, if there ever was one. And you'll see lots of bad publicity about coconut oil. And, of course, I wouldn't expect anything less if the masses knew how important coconut oil was to alleviating type 2 diabetes. A lot of medication would not be purchased. So about somewhere between a teaspoon or two of coconut oil per day is great. It's got to be consistent. I recommend you cook with it because then it gets absorbed into the food. But you can always take a teaspoon and consume it. But it is a lot of fat. And it's not good to take in a lot of fat all at once because it ends up competing with your red blood cells for oxygen. So I recommend diluting out this great fat called coconut oil by having food with it or cooking your food in it. The other way to clear your cell membranes so that your cell membranes can let insulin and glucose pass over them, pass through, is again just taking enzymes. So taking enzymes with your meal and at bedtime will help clear your cell membranes. So that combination will eliminate the cause of diabetes. Now, if your diabetes has been around a long time, your pancreas may also be weakened because the pancreas releases the insulin and it may get stressed. So in order to help heal the cells that make up your pancreas, you would take something called Aloe Max, and that's a product I have. So you can call privately and I can talk to you about that. But Aloe Max is a good cell regenerator. It will lower your blood sugar, and it'll help heal any organ, any damage in the body. But it also, like I say, it's really good for blood sugar. So that's the information on diabetes and blood sugar. Another question is about ischemic feet. Now, most people think of the word ischemic when it's linked to a stroke. So an ischemic stroke means there wasn't enough blood flow in the brain, and that's called an ischemic stroke. But it applies to anything. So ischemic feet means low blood flow to the feet. And so you'll have all the symptoms of not having blood. And if you don't have blood, you don't have oxygen. You can't remove toxins because that's all the purpose of blood. So you get tingling and numbness and very dangerous because you're not getting oxygen to the tissue in the feet. So again, a couple things to do. You've got to keep the blood clean so it can flow. You've got to keep the arteries clean so it can flow. Enzymes for sure. You've got to make sure you're taking enzymes with your meals and also at bedtime, because enzymes at bedtime are going to break down plaques and blockages in your arteries. If you take the enzymes with your meals, you'll diminish the formation of these blockages, but you have to do both if you already have blockages. So enzymes with your meals will allow you to digest your food completely so you don't get plaques, but also without food at bedtime so you can break down existing deposits and plaques. So that's one start for low blood flow in the feet. The rest is all about movement, massage, and healing. So one of the best ways to massage the feet is to take a lacrosse ball and put it under one foot. And you can be seated or standing, but you're going to have most of your weight on the other foot, not on the foot where the lacrosse ball is below it. And you want to take between 30 and 60 seconds just to move the ball from your heel to your toes, which means you're moving that ball very slowly. And you'll hit some spots during that slow movement where you'll feel a little bit of pain and numbness and tingling, and those are just your problem areas. And then you can go again the other way or roll along a different path under your feet and then choose the other foot. But that's something to do quite often to essentially massage the feet. So I highly recommend that. for low blood flow. It's actually a good thing for many people to do, not just people with ischemic feet. So we have another question also from Joseph. And the question was about antacids for GERD, which stands for gastrointestinal reflux disease. And it's an interesting question because there's really no need to take antacids for GERD. It's a fallacy that one should take antacids when they have acid reflux. So we'll go back to the cause, which I always do, and then we figure out the solution. So the cause of GERD is when the pancreas was asked by the stomach to release protein digesting enzymes called protease enzyme. And the way the stomach asks for these enzymes is to let acid in the form of hydrochloric acid into the stomach. So this hydrochloric acid goes into the stomach, and this acid is the cause for the high acidity in the stomach, and it's all part of the normal functioning of the stomach. But that acid is a signal for the pancreas to release this protease enzyme. If the pancreas does not release the protease enzyme, and sometimes that's because the pancreas is stressed from sometimes the stress is from not being able to make insulin, which we already talked about for diabetes and blood sugar. The same organ. The organ that releases the insulin also releases protease enzyme. They can get stressed for either reason. And when an organ gets stressed, it gets larger and it gets very inefficient. So the body, when it doesn't get these enzymes, the protease enzyme to digest proteins, it just puts more acid into the stomach, which is analogous to the stomach yelling at the pancreas, "Hey, I want more protease enzyme. You didn't hear me." And then you end up with too much acid in the stomach and still not enough protease enzyme because the pancreas can't keep up. So you end up with a lot of acid in the stomach. At first you would think, well, it's very logical. I'll take an antacid which neutralizes the acid in the stomach. At first you'd think, well, that makes sense. But it's the worst thing you can do. And the reason it's the worst thing is your body wasn't asking for an antacid. It was asking for protease enzyme. So if you neutralize the acid in the stomach, all your body is going to do is rip through that neutralizing factor, that antacid, and then go right back and put more acid into the stomach. And that's why once you start antacids, it's a Ferris wheel. You just never get off. You're just going round and round and round. You take antacids, you lower your stomach acidity, but the stomach fights back and puts more acid into the stomach. You take more antacids, and you just keep going around the cycle. So the solution is give your body what it wants. And what it wants is protease enzyme. So give your body a good plant enzyme blend that's very high in protease, at least 100,000 units. The factor is HUT. So that's the acronym for hydrazine units, is tyrosine. At least 100,000 units of protease enzyme per capsule, and eventually, within a week or a little more perhaps, your body will start realizing that it's getting the protease enzyme it needs, and then it's allowed, it doesn't need to put so much acid into the stomach, and the acid production will keep diminishing until you have no pain at all. So that's the main cause of GERD. And again, the solution is not antacids. That's only going to solve the problem for an hour, maybe less. And then you just have to keep living on antacids. Not a good thing to do. It's a very good money maker for the pharmaceutical industry, but it's very bad for humans to take antacids. Should let the body just function the way it should. Another question by Joseph was a good antioxidant that would replace statins. So the reason a person would take a statin drug is to lower cholesterol. And the way a statin drug works is it tricks the liver into not making cholesterol. So the liver needs certain proteins and enzymes to make cholesterol. So it interferes with that process, but it's mainly through the protein utilization process. The side effect is you don't utilize the proteins necessary to keep lean body mass, such as muscle tissue. And we all have muscle tissue. Some of us have more than others, but we all have it. So when we take statins, the typical side effect is muscle soreness and, of course, muscle atrophy, meaning shrinkage. Well, if you don't want to take a statin, then very few people need a statin drug. About 1% of those with high cholesterol need a statin drug. The other 99% can do it all with diet. But for that 1%, they have statin drugs. But a good substitute would be to think about the purpose of cholesterol and just help out the body. So what cholesterol does, it is not only a reactant to make vitamin D, so we need it. We don't want to go to zero. But it also acts as an antioxidant. And chemically, an antioxidant sacrifices itself. It gets oxidized so something else does not get oxidized. And if you've read anything about health in the past decade or 20 years, you've heard that oxidation is bad and oxidation is linked to aging and antioxidants are good because they decrease oxidation. Well, that's what cholesterol does. It's just that most people don't learn that the mechanism for an antioxidant to function is the antioxidant is the one getting oxidized. It's sacrificing itself. So the organs in your body and the cells that make up those organs and red blood cells do not get damaged through oxidation. Since cholesterol is an antioxidant, all you need to do is consume an antioxidant that's stronger than cholesterol, and also one that would fight plaque formation or cholesterol hardening, and that is red algae. The active ingredient is called astaxanthin, and it's very difficult to get pure astaxanthin. It's much, much better to get it in the form of red algae or heart algae, as it's commonly known. And that's all you would need to do is consume 2 red algae, heart algae, per day, and that'll be a nice substitute for taking a statin drug so that you don't have hardening of cholesterol. Now, the next thing is, how do you lower your cholesterol level without a statin drug? Because an antioxidant, that's not going to necessarily lower your cholesterol by much at all. But the way to lower cholesterol is to get it out of the body. And the only way to get it out of the body is through soluble fiber. One of the best is rolled oats, oatmeal. That is one of the best, least expensive ways to lower your cholesterol level. You're going to eat anyway, so choose it for breakfast. and it's essentially free because you're going to eat anyway. So if I tell you a food you should consume other than a supplement, well, there's no cost. There's no charge to you. So I recommend, if you have high cholesterol, especially high LDL cholesterol, which stands for low-density lipoprotein, if you have high cholesterol, high LDL, start eating rolled oats, oatmeal, for breakfast, and that will drag the cholesterol out of your body. Now, if your sugar was high, like when we were talking about diabetes, you'd want to lower your sugar. And all you really need to do to lower your sugar is go run, exercise, move. Just move the body, and you will burn sugar. So if you were to eat some cotton candy and you were diabetic, you go, oh, I just ate this horrible stuff. Just go run, go move, go exercise. And your blood sugar will go right down because you're metabolizing blood sugar. But it won't work for cholesterol. If you try to exercise your way out of cholesterol, it will do nothing at all. You need to drag it out of the body with a soluble fiber. Like I say, one of the best and least expensive, very efficient, is rolled oats. So that's what I have for this week's educational call. I will be doing another call next week, and I think I covered most everything that was in the questions this week. So if you do have a question, I'll be able to cover it next week. Just contact me in some way, phone, text, email, and I'll talk about it next week. So until then, everybody have a safe and healthy evening. All right, good night, everybody.